Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope everybody is doing well. I am so excited to have you all here for the sixth We Build Boldly conversation. I'm triply, I always say this every single time, but I'm always triply excited about the guest that I have today. But today's really, really special because I have my partner and friend who is going to be chatting with us today. However, you know the drill, we are having these conversations in celebration of Build Boldly turning one. This is the We Build Boldly conversation series with impactful and insightful leaders across different industries. Today, we will be talking about Chapter 6 Transparency with Christian Giordano.
Thanks, Paula.
Christian, how are you?
I'm good. I'm not used to these things being live, so
Yes.
I'm a
No,
little
no,
out of
no.
my element.
Oh no, this is it's going to be great. It's live, and then of course, if folks are joining us afterwards, please enjoy the conversation on the replay. Um, Christian, of course, I always share like why each speaker is a little bit special to me. Christian is very, very special to me because if you have listened to me on any podcast, you know that my journey, my story, my career path is not complete without me mentioning what Christian Giordano did for me in terms of double promotion, putting me on this incredible path that I've been on now for the last 5 years. But it is not about me, it's about you, Christian. So I'm going to let you give, folks watching your elevator pitch. So who's Christian Giordano? What do you do? Pretend like you don't know me.
Okay, but first of all, I would say that, you and I hit it off from the very beginning, I think when we first met. And, I deserve zero credit in kind of everything that you've accomplished because you've done it on your own. I had really nothing to do with it.
Oh, you
And
gave
it's
me a
just
stepping
been
stone.
Yeah, but you've been amazing as a partner for now many years, which is crazy. Okay, so my elevator pitch. So I am a I'm trained as an architect. I went to undergraduate school at the University of Miami, where we just celebrated our graduating class's 25th anniversary. I'm on this crazy WhatsApp with people sending all these pictures from 25 years ago from when we graduated. It's mind blowing. And it was actually 30 years ago that we started in architecture
You mean
school
you're
together.
not like 25? Like, I don't
Not,
know what you're talking about.
I'm pushing 50 these days. I'm soon to be on the downslope. And then I went to graduate school at UCLA for architecture, where I worked for some pretty superstar architects out there in Los Angeles. But always my heart was in New York City. Families from New York City and New Jersey, so ended up coming back. Got a job at a large architecture firm where I ultimately met my wife. Worked there for several years, and then spent the bulk of my career really until the last 10, 12 years at Mancini at a company called HLW International, which I credit them to kind of giving me all of the experience that I have, from sort of a junior designer to a senior designer to a principal to learning how to lead a team. And then obviously that's Bola, where you and I met. You were the only one in that accounting department that spoke. Everyone else was silent. It was like they were in a little cone and nobody spoke. And I would go in and, I don't know, turn in like my expense report or something like that. And you and I would just have these nice chats. And I always thought, one day if Bull and I could work together again, that would be awesome. She's awesome.
Oh, don't make me cry on this on this live. Yeah. So, okay, so that's how we met, but then now take us through to Mancini Duffy. Like, how did you end up at Mancini? How did you end up being this incredible, amazing leader that you are today?
So I ended up at Mancini. I think I was bored at HLW, to be honest with you. I was leading the architecture group. We were kind of doing a lot of work internationally, going back and forth. I had a very young family at that point. Actually, I'm probably only one daughter at that point. And sort of that travel was getting a little old. Those are long trips to go when you're leaving your wife and a newborn
Mhm,
baby for 3 weeks at a time. And I had worked on a series of broadcast projects. And the project manager on that broadcast, on those projects, was a guy by the name of Ray Arnold from a company called VVA, very well known a project management group here in New York City. And Ray and I took a liking to one another. And I've always said this before. Ray was a Ray had a reputation of being very difficult to work with, and for whatever reason, and he was pretty demanding. I worked really well with Ray,
mhm,
and I guess I didn't, I just did my work, and he was fine. And he said to me years later, "Hey, there's this guy who's got a pretty big firm. You probably have heard of it. His he needs a young guy to come to his firm to reinvigorate the firm, the culture, the type of work they do. Would you be willing to meet him?" And I said, "You know what? Why not? I think I'm probably ready for a career change." And I went and I met Ralph Mancini. And Ralph was one of the most extraordinary people I had ever met. Unfortunately, Ralph passed away now many, many years ago. Um, Ralph had retired in the early 2000s when his wife got sick. He was a family man, and he left the firm to this guy, Tony Sharippa and Dina Frank, who you both know, guy and girl, and basically I came over, and the impetus was that, Christian, this was going to be your firm. You could run it the way you want, and you can make it your own. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty interesting prospect. Maybe because I had thought, well, I'll probably go out on my own at some point, maybe start my own firm. But this was almost the best of both worlds, where I could start my own firm in a sense within the context of an established organization, with a name, with already people and projects and
mhm.
systems set up. And that's ultimately what drew me to Mancini. And I got here, and we were probably about 35 people. And I would say it was a complete mess when I got here. Who knew? I guess I didn't do my due diligence along the way.
Listen, you've done incredible. You've done incredible, and I think I want to, as we're talking around this conversation on transparency, you've actually just been really transparent now about your journey now. But I want to go to the interview that you and I had, because I think like that was one of the most transparent conversations, interview style, right? Even though we both knew each other, we were both sort of interviewing each other, trying to woo each other, but we were both very transparent. I always share how I came into this conversation with a lot of questions, right? Yeah, my kids were 3 and 1, or maybe two under two. Like I was like, Christian, don't worry about the work. Like, let's talk about your policy on family. Let's talk about like if you're running a flexible organization, how are we gonna set me up for success? I like put you on the hot seat. And I actually want to know what was going through your mind as I was asking you these questions, right? Because you were very, very honest about where the firm was and where you wanted the firm to go and why you thought that that would be a good fit. In fact, you sort of pushed me. You're like, listen, Bola, try it out. If it works out, great. I'm sure you might not remember this, but
Yeah, I
of course,
remember.
you remember, right? If it
Oh
works
yeah.
out, great. If it doesn't, then at least you gave it a shot. So, what was going through your mind as an interviewee, was asking you all of these things?
I do remember that because it had been years and years since we had seen each other. And, my hopes were kind of where we've ultimately ended up with you as the CFO. And I saw that as, I knew from the moment I had met you all those years before that you would just be a great person to work with in general. And you were definitely a leader, whether you didn't know it, whether you knew it or not at the time, just by the way you kind of carried yourself, and were very outgoing, as opposed to most of the people in that group. So when we sat down for that interview, I remember you asking me these questions. I certainly wasn't prepared for them, but I had thought a lot about this because I use myself and my wife as an example. My wife went to design school for an interior designer. She worked at Swanky Hayden Connell, as I had mentioned, as a designer, and she lasted there probably less than a year because I think she saw the lack of flexibility in her life for that kind of job. So, you're tied to your desk as a designer. And as much as we try not to do that here at Mancini, it ends up happening. It's a passion. There's always more you can draw. There's always another palette you can pick out. There's always another detail you can think about. And so it just goes on and on forever. So we were having drinks with a furniture colleague, and I remember this person saying to my wife, "Oh, you should think about getting out of design and going into a related field where you can be a furniture rep, and you can make actually better money than the design side, and you have total flexibility." And I remember she gave an example of, she went to the gym in the morning, and then she went on some appointments, and then she went to lunch. And I remember my wife, I remember this like it was yesterday, thinking, oh, I could see her saying, wow, that's the kind of job I need, and probably in the future, if I ever wanted to have a family, I would need. So that flexibility that my wife has always had has always stood out to me. And I remember from all the as accommodating as HLW tried to be, or even the early Mancini days, that ultimately, that flexibility comes from the top. You need to
Yeah.
really want to give people flexibility. You can't just talk about it and then expect to come in the office and see people sitting here from 9 to 6 and be annoyed if they're not here. So when you said all that to me, it kind of all clicked at that moment. And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, Bola. Like, you've got a young family. I had a young family.
Yep.
You know, the I don't care what anybody says. The mother and a lot of times the father need flexibility. You want to be part of your kid's life. You want
Hmm.
to raise your family. The work stuff's extremely important for many, many reasons, but at the end of the day, you need to be present. And so when you said, "Hey, well, what's your policy?" My policy was, "Hey, let's figure it out.
Hmm.
If you need flexibility, if you need to come in, if you need to not work in the office, however it is, as long as you can be a leader in the firm and do the work that needs to be done, I don't care how we ultimately do it. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter at the end of the day." And I think, it's funny, like pandemic wise, how it's all kind of changed. And I don't know about you, but I always think of us like, what are you talking about? We were always flexible like
Yes.
this, like
Yeah.
that. It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I really appreciate it because I think for me, when I did my research looking at controllers, right? So I joined MD as a controller, looking at what do other controllers look like? How many years experience do they have? Like, I was no match for what I was searching on LinkedIn, like the folks who were coming up. And so, I'm just always very grateful that you as a leader decided to take a chance on character, because I think you identified very early on from HLW days that I had strong character, and we knew that the skill is learned, right? So that the skills
Yes.
will match up. So you essentially have hired for character. And I think, like, that's one of the questions that I want to now lead on to, in the way in which we elevate people, in the organization, right? So I'm just looking over here because I have to to read my questions. I don't want to forget, right? So at Mancini, right, we really believe in entrusting employees with projects based on their desires to learn and lead rather than seniority, right? And how can actively making space for new voices advance the individual and company's growth? That's part one, right? Because we've lived it and we're
Mhm.
still living it right now. And at the same time, how do we distinguish between giving young professionals a chance to challenge themselves versus if we feel like they're not ready for it yet? So I'll ask the first one, and then I'll ask the second again. How can actively making spaces for new voices advance the individual's growth as well as the company's growth?
Well, I would say the way it works is that if we give that space to people, as you said, you can kind of learn that skill, you can learn that job. If you have the desire, I'm a big believer that if you have the desire to do the job and do it well, you can learn all of the other parts along the way, the functional parts along the way. But if you've got an idea, that at the end of the day is really the most important thing for me. And what we do here at Mancini is not for everybody, clearly. Um, and I'm the first one, if we talk about transparency, I've made many mistakes along the way, thinking that people could handle certain things where they couldn't. And either they left or we had to change their role. At at first, that would upset me. That no longer upsets me. I kind of get it. What we do with everyone is, if you've got that idea and you've got that passion, and we can make that space for you, you are going to excel. You're going to figure all that other stuff out, and you're going to be excited to do it because you can make it your own. You can do it your own way. I'm here. Our other partners are here. You're here to help, to guide, to give advice. Sometimes we do have to sit down with people and say, "Hey, you may have taken on a little too much." We
Hmm.
get that whole other the part that we need to get done is not getting done. Let's reel it back in, or let's reset in some way. Or some just kind of roll with it and they just go and go and go, and it grows. And so, the only way for a company like ours to scale and to scale properly is for other individuals within the firm to take on leadership roles, to go outside of their comfort zone, to be entrepreneurial. And that will grow the firm because we'll get into other sectors, we'll get other types of projects and bigger projects. I can't bring in all the work for a 100-person firm. It's impossible. And some of the other partners can't do that either. And the only way we're going to continue that scale is by inviting others into the fold and giving them that runway to flourish, frankly.
Yes, yes, I 100% agree. I think, we are not gatekeepers. We know that the strength of our company really is made up of the people that work with us and are on our teams. And we've been very, very fortunate to have identified really strong people who just align with, where we want to take the company, the things that we're doing with technology, right? So I think, that thing that you said about giving them access or giving them the chance while we are guiding them, while we are working side by side with them, is key, right? So that step, doing that already, they're already winners in their own career journeys just by us doing that.
I'm also the first one to say when I don't know the answer to something. And that goes back to the transparency thing. I mean, Bola, actually, you and I have had side conversations of, Christian, you're being a little too transparent. You might want to hold back a little bit, which I appreciate.
Hmm.
But I'm the first one to say, and I think of the person who leads our aviation group when he said he wanted to do aviation work. In a sense, I said to him, you're kind of on your own. I don't know much about that work. I don't know much about that world. I can jump in and help with certain things where I can. I can certainly, as we get things going, try to figure out, where I can help. But in a sense, you're taking this on. I don't really know, and we've learned it together, and it's turned out to be one of our best sectors.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Him, we'll say his name, John A, has been an absolute rock star, right? I think, again, just going back to the point of us just being really fortunate to have folks who are rock stars, folks who are multifaceted, folks who are not afraid to step up to the plate. They're scrappy, they're scrappy, and they're willing to do what it takes um, to get things done. Okay, so back again on this transparency topic, right? Being transparent requires great honesty and vulnerability. Two traits that may be very difficult for a lot of firms to, firm leaders, firms to adopt. I think for us, that's one of the things that we've prided ourselves in terms of, our town halls at the company, like how we update the everyone who's at the firm, right? So we know it's difficult, but we kind of like push through it, because we've seen the benefits of what transparency does for us, right? How can we all learn to share both good and bad, right, in our organizations, with those around us, right? So what are the
Mhm.
benefits of us sharing this, being a bit more transparent, with our teams?
Yeah, so as you know, I'm always transparent, and one of the things we do in our company is a monthly meeting. And a lot of times it's just simply a party. A lot of times it's got a more serious subject around it. And at least 4 times a year in terms of quarterly, it's essentially a business report. It's a report where we're going to say, hey, you know what? This is what's going on in the business from a new project point of view, from a vision point of view, where we want to go in the future, and from a financial point of view. Hey, by the way, this month we did really great. Oh, and there can be months where we didn't do so well. And maybe this is why. But I always try to put a positive spin on it. I'm always as transparent as I can be, and I think, sometimes, as we talked about, maybe a little too transparent. I have noticed that if you can scare people with transparency. Some can
And that's the
handle it.
honest truth. Yeah.
Yeah. Some can handle it and some can't. Some will, for good or for bad, and I think it's human nature, people immediately worry about how does this affect me personally. They don't think about it in the overall context of the company. And so I've learned to be a little bit more careful with the message and be positive about the message. Hey, look, this and this are doing really well. This and this aren't doing really well, but here's how we're going to fix it, whatever that might be. And if we come back to those challenges and call them challenges and opportunities as opposed to, losses or screw ups or whatever it is, it sets the tone for, oh, okay, I see. That sounds great. No, that didn't go so well, but they've got a plan, or maybe I can be part of that plan. Maybe I have an idea. And as you know, we're always encouraging ideas. What are your ideas? Come talk to me. I sit out. We all sit right in the middle of the studio. Come talk to me. And some people are very good about, kind of voicing their opinion and their ideas. And some, you could tell, probably have them and don't want to share them. And that's kind of the challenge, to figure out how to kind of, pull that out of people and get them to speak up. And because I guarantee there are people sitting right here on the floor, at Mancini Duffy, that have way better ideas than I do on a lot of things. And it would be awesome if they just told us.
This is a shout out to our folks. This is a shout out to our folks. I think, just based off of what you shared, the way I think, about our people is that they're just more engaged, right? Like you said, we've had to navigate the last 3 years, right, when things were really bleak. Sharing, still holding our town hall, still sharing with folks, all the different things that we're doing to get the firm through the pandemic. And like you said, some other folks might just have buckled. It was a scary time for us, even as leaders, right? And I think we were very transparent about that also, in a sense of like, we don't know everything. We don't know what the next 6 months are. But like you said, this is our plan for what is currently in front of us. These are the decisions that we are making to help us get through, these challenges that are facing us right now. And I think, I really think that we have folks who are just more engaged. So if you're a leader out there, you've been wrestling or grappling with, okay, what's my first step in transparency? How do I get my people to open up more? Be vulnerable, be yourself, right? That's part of the message in the book, right? I think people will connect with you a bit better, or connect with their leaders a bit better, when they know the real you, rather than some, made up version, or somebody you're pretending to be somebody you're not.
Yep, I agree. I am who I am. I can't pretend that I'm somebody else, and I try to express that. I don't like when people say I'm the boss and stuff like that. I don't see myself at that, in that way at all. And I'm I'm genuinely grateful for everybody that works at our firm. And I hate when when I hear other leaders say, oh, that person works for me. They don't
Mm,
work for you. They work for the company and the company as a whole.
yeah.
And I think just that mentality of that, again, grateful. I'm so grateful that everybody works here. It's amazing. I wake up every day going, wow, like I can't believe these people work at our firm and they put their heart and soul into it and their entire lives into it.
Yes,
It's
yes.
humbling.
It's very humbling for us. There's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. We take it very, very seriously. You know, that folks come in and show up every day working on these amazing projects that we're doing. Okay, so you and I were recently featured in an article, Building a Bridge Between Past and Future. And we were talking about some of the old traditions that we've reformed, and also, like, when you're sort of stagnant, or keep yourself in a box, how that stifles innovation and growth in any firm, right? So in reimagining the future of Mancini, let's go back maybe 5 years, 5 years, 5, 6 years ago, right? What were some of the things that you thought about changing, implementing, innovating, and how have you seen it evolve so far, right? And are there risks, especially now, let's also talk about our industry. Are there risks in this innovative initiatives that we've done over the years when it comes to dealing with our clients or the changes that we're trying to make within the industry?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely risks because you really do put yourself out there. I would say from 5 years ago, one of the things that we talked about was becoming leaders in technology innovation in what we do, and we started what we call the Design Lab, which is essentially a research and development arm of Mancini. And one of the risks is we went and we hired people that were 100% non-billable that essentially began to write software for Mancini Duffy, which is very rare in our industry. There are some other firms that have done that and developed software along the way, but it's I mean, it's less than a half a percent of all the architecture firms in the world that are doing that, and so there's inherent risk in that. But what it became, that R&D side of things became more than just technology. It became integrated into our psyche and what we
Hmm.
do. It became our process. So instead of just using technology just to have a cool final effect, we use technology as integrated into our design. So from day one, the designers and the clients are in this technology. They're in this immersive environment. And in a weird way, the market has sort of caught up to us where there are other firms that are trying to get in and do this kind of thing. And I like to think that we're still the leader because we were so far ahead. And then looking to the future, we've got so many plans for what we want to do with that technology and even go way beyond the virtual reality side of things or the integrated delivery that we're doing. Um, it's become the Mancini way. And I think, going back to sort of the early leadership of, what did I want this firm to be? I wanted the firm to have, a great culture, to have, great people that work in it. I want us to do obviously great projects and beautiful design. Um, and I wanted it to be innovative, but I also wanted to be able to confidently say in front of clients, Mancini does it differently, and this is why we do it differently, and this is how we do it differently. And I think we've achieved that. We have to keep going, and we can't rest on our laurels. There's so much to
Hmm.
do to stay ahead of the curve, but that to me is always the most exciting part. I threw out an idea to a team just a couple of days ago. It was a wacky idea. I could tell some people said, wow, you are insane. And then I had some people on the call that said, oh, that's interesting. I think we could figure that out. So I'm always trying to push and push and push to get us to that place.
Um, for me, that was my selling point in terms of one, joining the firm, and two, becoming, one of your partners, because I was just so excited about the possibilities of what we can do and the fact that we were actually executing on things that were in people's brains, and we were committing not just words but actual dollars, resources towards seeing how this can pan out for us, and the way it has changed and evolved over the last 5 years. It was an absolute no-brainer that I wanted to be a part of something this exciting. I think one of the things that you had said early on was that architecture has been done the same way for 200, I don't know how many plus years.
Yeah.
And, we were due for a shakeup. And so I'm just huge on us leaning into our potential, huge on us dreaming really big, and just looking towards the endless possibilities there are for us. The fact that we actually tried, even for us in our careers, is incredible.
Yeah,
Is
I agree.
incredible.
I agree.
Is
And thanks for
incredible.
being part of the journey because we could not do it without you. Trust me.
Say that again. Let the folks hear.
We could not do any of this without Bola. Trust me.
Oh. Okay, so I have one more question and we'll wrap up. Okay. So in Build Boldly, I say to folks who read the book that you have to bring your authentic self to work and consider, like, why are you sharing? Why are you connecting with people, in the workplace, outside of the workplace, on LinkedIn? And I want to talk a little bit about anti-architects, and if for those of you who don't know, Christian also has a podcast. Listen, he's my people, right? We're always doing multiple things. So Christian has a podcast called The Anti-Architect. And so what, was the inspiration behind Anti-Architect, and why is it important for you that, with the folks or guests that you interview, why is it important for you for them to share authentically?
So, and it's funny, I see one of the people in the chat that is partly the inspiration for the anti-architect, and that's Ted Majeka. Many, many years ago, we were doing a strategic planning. This is probably going back, well, with the pandemic, hard to say, probably 6, 7, maybe even more years ago. And Ted had written on a whiteboard thought leadership. And that always stuck out to me, thought leadership. And I'm not a good writer. I could never sit down in front of a blank piece of paper and start writing my thoughts down. I would get too caught up in, for me as the architect, the format. First of all, is the typeface correct? All the nonsense that architects get consumed by. Let alone formulating my ideas in some sort of readable paragraph. But the idea of, yeah, you know what? Thought leadership. I do have a lot of ideas about the industry and how could we ultimately get it out there? And it was really our PR people, Carrie Baylog and Lauren, who went out of their way to kind of, in a sense, really force me on the podcast thing, because I don't like when things are about me. Again, it's about the group. It's about everything. I don't like sort of taking credit for things that when it's a group effort. And I also don't like putting myself out there. I don't like sharing my stuff, my personal life. And I've been, in a sense, forced to do it. And I'm eternally grateful to them for, doing that. And so the idea behind the anti-architect was, in fact, that a conversation about, what's going on in our industry, from shared experiences to what do architects do well? What do we not do well? Where can we improve? Where can clients improve? A lot of what we don't do well is a lot of times the client's fault, or maybe it's the contractor's fault, or maybe it's the engineer's fault. Maybe it's our fault. A lot of times it is our fault. If we're talking to one another and we're ironing out these issues and just having an open dialogue, it's only going to improve the profession. The more architects can kind of talk open and honestly to one another, and with our partners, because at the end of the day, the engineer is our partner, the client is our partner, the contractor is our partner. But the way our industry is set up, it's automatically kind of against one another.
Mhm.
And it's set up to point fingers at one another, and it never works. The projects that are always successful are the projects where we're all under one roof and we all have a common goal. Maybe that common goal is to make more money as a bonus if we do it well. Maybe it's some sort of press or some sort of other acolytes. But when there's a common goal and a reason to do a project correctly and right and not point fingers at one another, if we could just talk about that, it really truly does help. And I've gotten amazing feedback about the sort of open, honest dialogue. And I've also gotten used to, talking a little bit about myself and my life sort of more publicly. And I always forget that it's all out there. It really throws me off when people know stuff about me.
Yes, we love to see it. We love to know more about you, more about your beautiful family. Christian is downplaying this, but he also bakes amazing cakes outside of doing podcasts. Like I am his biggest fan. So yeah, so thank you so much for sharing all of this. Thank you for carving out some time in your busy day. In your busy day for me. I really, really appreciate it. And I've really enjoyed our conversation. I have two fill in the blanks that you have to do. Just complete the sentence, and then you will tell everyone listening where they can find you and connect with you. So, Christian is being transparent when.
I'm standing in front of a crowd and they're looking at me for some sort of leadership and guidance.
All right. And Christian is building boldly when.
When I'm with my partners and we're talking open and honestly about how to move the business forward.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank
And,
you.
and let me just say, Bola, thank you. You know the love I have for you and everything that you've done. You every day, your book, what you do is extraordinary. I don't know how you do it, um, but you are a absolutely wonderful, wonderful, amazing person.
Oh, thank you. So are you. Heart. I think that's how they do it. Heart.
Do I have to do that? I can't do
You
that.
do not have to
I
do
can't
that.
do that.
Okay. All right. So, where can we connect with you? Where can we learn more about the podcast? Where can we learn more about Mancini Duffy? Let us know.
All on the Mancini Duffy website. There's links to everything. There is the antiarchitect.com, which will link you to the podcast. There's my Instagram, which is Christian D. Giordano, I believe. The
Yeah.
LinkedIn, which is C. Giordano. So it's all there. I think if you just kind of Google it, you can kind of find everything.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for lovely comments. I'll be sure to feedback and respond after this. It's very hard for me to do it at the same time. Christian, thanks so much. I appreciate it, and we will see you guys in like an hour and a half. I have another one coming up today.
Good for you.
All right then.
Alrighty. Thanks again.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.